Thank you all for tuning in. The following is a presentation of Bald Spots Productions. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Subscribe, follow, whatever it is you've got to do to kick that algorithm into gear and help us reach more people. Yes, it is I, your humble host, Bill Hatch III, coming to you live from the palatial home studios of Bald Spots Productions here in the beautiful city of Malden, Missouri. And joining me today from more than acceptable safe social distances are my guests, Michaela Gaffen Stone and Jeffrey. Oh, now I didn't ask how to pronounce your last name. Is it Szur?
Szur, the S is silent.
Szur? The S is silent. Okay. Well, maybe you should camelback the capitalization and have it little s, big Z.
There you go. That might work.
Yep. There we go. So how are you two doing? I hope you're having wonderful days so far.
So far, so good. My end, yeah.
All right.
Everything's great on my end.
That's awesome. And I always start the show off with the same question, and that is, who are you reading? So we'll start off ladies first. I'm not afraid to be sexist. So Michaela, who are you reading today?
Who am I reading? I'm going to have to say my husband's books, because he writes fantasy and he writes science fiction, and I'm a particular fan of the fantasy that he writes. It's all angels and demons and stuff, so Adam Gaffen is who I'm reading right now.
Okay, wow, that's awesome. What's the name of the book that you're reading of his right now, so we can do a little plug?
Right now, he's got 3 books in the series, so the Book of 1, the Book of 2, the Book of 3, and you can find him on Cassidy Chronicles. He has, I think, 27 books out now, so lots. If you're into science fiction, he's your man. If you're into fantasy, he has some good stuff.
Okay, so Adam Gaffen, and you said it was, what was the name of the website?
I think it's the Cassidy Chronicles. Cassidy with
the Cassidy Chronicles. Okay.
.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you can tell him you plugged him.
He has some free books on there, so go for it.
All right. Awesome. And Jeffrey, how about you? Who are you reading right now?
I'm pretty much with the business. It's all the trade publications. I'm constantly doing research and constantly looking at different research or different parts of the environmental aspect. And then personally, I'm pretty boring. I basically stay in the Bible every day. I don't read other authors, so I'm pretty much daily reading in that, and that takes all of my reading time.
Okay, that's not a bad thing to be reading. I myself am doing research. I've got a lot of school books going on right now, but I'm actually working on a book called The Emotionally Healthy Leader by Peter Scazzaro. And I always forget how to pronounce the double Z in Italian, but it's really great. I'm doing a lot of research on leadership right now, because I'm writing my book. I'm writing my own book series on leadership and my theories of how that should work. I'm writing my book series, and you got to do research when you write a book. So, have one professor said you got to have enough of other people's materials to support yourself, so that's what I'm trying to do.
Research is absolutely important. It just seems like we don't get as much anymore, right? Everyone wants something now, and through social media and through everything like that, it's a lost art.
Yeah.
No one reads anymore.
No, that's
I love that we're going in
sure.
this direction. I love that we're going in this direction, because something I do for fun is get into research. I'm actually a board certified behavior analyst, So I'm all about the research. I have like 4 degrees, not because they make me brilliant, but because it's just fun to do the learning. And then you might as well get the piece of paper, right? So
That's right.
I hear you on the research. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I
after
saw
nearly
you on
20
the Blue
years.
Talks. Yeah, sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I saw Michaela on the Blue Talks and yeah, at MIT and talking about the research in the behavioral sciences, which really intrigued me. I mean, I was really looking forward to being able to have an opportunity to speak with you and you telling your story all the way back in school. You had your skeleton sitting there with the hat on, and I thought that was an incredible visual. So there's no doubt that research is near and dear to your heart.
Thank you for that, and thank you for watching the talk. The skeleton, I named her Anne just because, needed a name. That skeleton had more people taking selfies with it than you could imagine, and I was carrying it with me going through MIT, and people would either come close, wanting to know what was going on and wanting pictures, or they'd go far away. It was really interesting to see the responses to that, and I carried that in a suitcase on the plane. So the skeleton was all folded up in a suitcase. And it must have looked amazing going through the scanner.
As a behavioral scientist, what does that say about people that want to rush up and take a picture of a skeleton?
It told me something about their fear base and their lack of fear base. And I also noticed that a lot of people who were backing away had kids with them. And I don't know what they thought I was going to do to their kid or what the skeleton was going to do, but they were taking the kids away. Maybe they thought, there's a weird woman over there, we'll back off. But yeah, it was interesting. The whole experience was interesting to see how people reacted, particularly to the skeleton more than me. And I took it out for dinner and had it sitting in a chair next to me. It was hilarious. But it's a good icebreaker too, so.
And you can control the conversation because the skeleton's not going to say much. So
right, it just agreed with me. It's cool.
Yeah, yeah, that would be kind of an interesting experiment to see what kind of people back away and what kind of people come forward. See where their reality lies and in things. Way back in the 90s when I thought I was going to be a professional actor, I was out in Hollywood doing which play was that? That was The Merry Wives of Windsor. And one day we took a break from rehearsals and we went to this little sidewalk cafe. I don't remember what street it was on. It was probably San Vicente, but there was a little grassy median in the middle of the road with trees and like a little mini park kind of a thing. And on this grassy median, there was a gentleman. And he was standing there barking at cars. And while we were having our meal, he was barking at cars, and all of a sudden I noticed that he had stopped and he had gone over to one of the trees, sat down, and appeared to be eating his lunch. And I didn't think much of it, but then when he was done, he stood back up, walked to the edge of the median again, and began barking at cars again. And it occurred to me that was his reality and seemed very normal to him. That that our realities are like circles, like Venn diagrams, and that his part of the Venn diagram was in this reality, and most of ours were kind of over here. So maybe overlapping a little bit, but not a whole lot. And it occurred to me that most people's realities overlap quite a bit, but every now and again you find somebody whose reality is somewhere off askew, and so that things may seem perfectly normal to me, but not to someone else. Like it's perfectly normal for me now to go and check on my chickens, since I moved to Missouri, and but that's not everybody's reality. And so yeah, I obviously have no idea what that gentleman's doing today, but wherever his reality is, I hope he's happy. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, is that too far off from the way the world works, Michaela?
Well, as you were talking, my thought was, I wonder what his aim was. Like, what was he trying to
Mm-hmm.
achieve? Is he doing something for a dog that he loved and lost? Does he think he's a dog? Like, what is his purpose in doing that? Because every behavior we do, there's an end point. There's something you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to achieve, whether that's getting away from something to something, both of those things. But I would have gone over and talked to him because I'm so curious. I want to know, like, dude, why are you barking at the cars? What's happening? What do you expect to happen next? And if he barks at me, then okay, he's probably thinking he's a dog, in which case our conversation comes to an end because while I have 5 dogs, I don't really speak their language. So I'd have to leave it alone. But if he was able to converse with me, then I'd sit down with him and ask, like, okay, what's going on? What are we doing here? What's the point? Because he's compass mentis enough to take a lunch break.
Yeah.
Okay. He has a purpose to being there. So what is it?
That was the thing that really struck me is that was that was part of his normal. It was almost like it was his job to bark at cars, and now it's time for my lunch break. Yeah. So
right?
So yeah.
I really want to know about that. Like, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
So everything was normal to him on that. It was like, just like we, sitting at a desk. Okay, we go and we have our lunch break. His lunch break was in between barking at cars. So it's incredible. And in looking at that, like you were talking about the human design and how you use that as well, and breaking it down to coaching people. So I was really intrigued with all of that, and how you break that down and how you evaluate the people. I did also go to your website, which was very well done, and I loved your interaction with how it was designed, and how your website person said to you, well, I need you to go take this so I can know how to work with you. I have that same problem because I just don't seem to work well with techies, and I am the most technology illiterate. I still need help with my phone's smart. I'm dumb. So I just thought it was incredible how you do that and how you break it down, and was really interested on your thought, because you constantly used human design. So how do you define the human design?
I don't actually have to define human design. It is a thing that's out there that I use. So human design is, I have a science background, so my degrees are
I love
science.
that. Yeah.
They're that end. Then human design is all the way the other end, where there is no science that proves this per se, but the way I look at it is, I'm going to look at your chart, which comes from your birth information. So yes, think astrology, and astrology is in there, but so is Kabbalah, so is the Hindu Brahmin chakras, so is quantum mechanics, and so is the Chinese Book of Wisdom, the I Ching. So all of this is involved in human design. And what I've found through experiments by talking to people and getting them to go test things is that it's really accurate. So the way I look at human design is, it's a living science, in that I'm going to give you the information, and I do not want you to take my word for it. Please don't. But go test it. Go see, how does that work for you? And there's different things that come up. For example, I'm a generator, and what that tells anybody that knows human design, it's a few things, but one of the things is, if I'm going to make a decision that is a good decision, an accurate decision, I need options to consider. I'm not just going to get it out of the ether. So if you want me to respond to something, your best bet is to give me options. Now, if you're a manifester, for example, I'm not going to give you options. I'm going to leave you with it, and you're going to tell me, because you're very sort of active and very innovative, and you're going to be initiating completely new things that other people haven't seen before. We have very different skill sets. And so knowing what that person is like for skill sets helps you to talk to them in a way that they can receive. And I found that this is phenomenal with parents and kids, with co-workers. And there was one couple I worked with, they had a 3-year-old, and the couple were talking about divorce. They were so mad at each other. Like they were just like, and lots of disputing going on. So I did both their charts and worked with the two of them. And basically, each one needed to understand where the other one was coming from, give them the grace and space to be who they are, and then give the other person some of what they needed. And now we're about a year and a half later, and they're doing great. They have a business together. They're not even considering, parting ways or anything, and their child is happy. So it was a simple thing of, this is how you work, this is how you work, now this is how you work together.
And I thought that's one of the reasons, Bill, I was so excited about the offer, and I guess it was a couple of months ago that you made the offer for me to come on the podcast. Was I see what you do, and it's basically just promoting conversation. Let's put people together and have a conversation, which I think in today's world is a lost art. No one knows how to converse anymore. No one knows how to, everyone wants to go into a conversation proving they're right instead of trying to discover what is right, and I think, and that's why I was so happy that Michaela was going to be on, because, human behavior, but what has caused that? I mean, is it social media? Is it the technologies? I mean, I know, watching my niece and nephew grow up, we'd be at a dinner table and watching them text back and forth to each other instead of having a conversation. Now, if I ever tried to do that when I was growing up with my dad, it was a smack. Well, what do you do? We're at the dinner table, we're having a conversation, but how this is transgressed. So that's why I was so excited. I mean, I've been spending a lot of different times on podcasts on a lot of things specific to my industry, whether it's, environmental or alternate energy, and my company. So I'll do my quick plug, is Altitude Water. We make machines that make pure drinking water from the humidity in the air. I like to say that I use technology licensed by Mother Nature. I totally believe that this earth is an incredible creation that provides all that we need, and I tap into the water cycle that has purified and purified the same amount of water as when the earth was formed. No one can make water, okay, but our water cycle does a great job of purifying it. Nature usually does things the best way. Us humans are the ones that usually mess it up, and by the engineer's creed of the solution to pollution is dilution. Let's take these nasty chemicals and throw them in a big body of water and get it down to a level that the government says is safe for us to drink. Well, you keep doing that for decades. Eventually, you can't keep kicking that can down the road without breaking your toe, right? Eventually, the water can't dilute it so much that it's not safe, which is what what is happening. When you become a pharmaceutical society and we're all taking pills, and only 10% of that goes into your body, 10% of 90% of that is urinated out and goes into our aquifers and into our groundwater. I think that has a lot of causes for the different things that are happening. So that being said, that's a little bit of my background and what excites me and gets me up every day. And I love being able to use it and do programs and to help people. We're doing 1,000 gallons with a 501c3 called Aqua Vera in Maka, Cameroon, that L'Oreal Women's Sustainability Fund donated $350,000 to provide pure drinking water to a community of 1,000 people, a gallon a day. We were involved in the Maui wildfire. So those are things that get me excited. But really, for this platform, and I was just looking forward to having a conversation, because it's so funny. I talk to people that I went to school with, and I'm about ready to go back to my 40th high school reunion, and we used to be in debate class together, right? And we all loved our debate teacher, who's passed, Harry Holcomb, God rest his soul. I mean, he was probably totally different person than I was, the drama guy and everything, and I was an athlete, but I had ultimate respect for him, and I loved his debate class. But all these people I took debate with don't want to debate anymore. They want to block you on Facebook, and automatically, because you think this way or you think that way, and there's no more conversation about it. So I just wanted to, number one, commend you for what you do and the platform that you do, and I think more people need to do that, because it doesn't matter if we agree or disagree. If we can't talk about it and discuss it, or if we think that we don't need to test our own theories and to find out what's right, then what are we doing here? So having a behavioral scientist and all these other things, I was really excited about the show. It's I had people flying in from Spain. I messed up the time and everything like that, but I was really looking forward to this. I just want to commend you on this platform and how necessary it is to teach people to let's talk about it. And again, the research. Let's look at what the research says. Let's look and see what the science says as well, because I think we've all forgotten that.
Jeffrey,
I'll shut up
I
and
gotta
let
say,
anyone respond to that. I get on a roll
Jeffrey,
sometimes.
I gotta say, I am excited for what you're doing. I'm thrilled for what you're doing. And something neither of you know until in a minute's time is when I first left school, I went to work in a chemistry lab, and that was for a water authority in the UK.
Wow.
And so I used to be in what they called the special projects lab, which means you get to do anything and everything nobody else wants, right? You get
Right.
all the messy projects and what have you. So this is centuries ago now, but we were testing the water and what is in the water. And then there's a laundry list of stuff from the World Health Organization that says you can have this much of this in it, and all kinds of chemicals and things that you might not expect in your water, like arsenic, but it's naturally occurring, and yes, it's in your water. And what I discovered in that time of work was that the London's water, particularly, was on or above the World Health Organization quota, shall we say, for things like arsenic and a few other levels every day. And so what happens when those levels are up is they add more chemicals to bind with that so that it no longer registers. It doesn't mean it went anywhere. It's still in the water, and you are ingesting that stuff. And I have very strong feelings about that. Let's just say that at the time of me working for the Water Authority, I would filter my water, boil it twice, and then I still wasn't thrilled about drinking it because I knew what was in it. And it has gotten worse since then. I also have a background as a nurse. I've traveled a lot, and so I've done different jobs in different places. And one of the things in my study then that I discovered was the contraceptive pill that's been around since the 60s actually ends up in your water supply. Now, if you add that to the hormones that are given to the cattle, then what you have got is men having fertility problems, men growing breasts, and women having hormone-related cancers. And I will wear the tin hat if I have to. I don't care. But that is a thing, and I have seen this through my work process. So it's fact, it's researched, it's out there.
We have frogs and amphibians that don't know whether they're male or female in the water based upon the levels. And again, we have a government agency that tells us what to test for and how to test for it. But if they never put those things on the testing list, we don't know what's in it, right? So we have an EPA that hasn't put a new chemical in the United States, Environmental Protection Agency, who's responsible for the testing procedures and what is allowable in the water. Well, they have like 50 chemicals that for the past 20 years, they've been doing a 5-year study to decide what we're going to do about it. For the last 20 years, they've renewed it 4 times. And it's like, you're kidding? And actually today in the news was the Biden-Harris administration, which I applaud them doing this, finally came out with the PFAS chemicals, a level, which are the forever chemicals. These are chemicals for your nonstick, your cosmetics, your eyeliner, your stuff like that has been in our water for the past 20 years, and no one's given a level. And it's now come out at how dangerous this is. So I give them credit by finally coming out and saying, this is the level, and we've got to protect the 100 million people that are putting a chemical in their body that will never leave. It's a forever chemical. So, but it took 20 years for us to get to that point. So how much have we been drinking and putting these chemicals in our body? That's a scary thought process, because water has always been considered free. No one really wants to pay for water. So your infrastructure and your things that are necessary to protect your water aren't done. And now our aquifers are antiquated. Our delivery systems have lead. Look at Flint, Michigan. Look at all the things that are happening. And we're made up 72% water. We talk about food, but you can't go 3 days without water without dying. So, we look at Africa, and we look at, the sanitation and the malnutrition, but also the lack of vitamins where they're getting the blindness and stuff like that. So, what are we doing here? If we if we don't have a conversation about it, if we don't bring it to people's attention, if we don't do the research other than what the media wants us to look at, then, I always say with the mouth complains about 50 things, prevents the feet from changing one of them, right? So let's always be trying to have that conversation, but also let's start trying to do something about it, which is I think what we're all doing here, and what your platform allows us to do, Bill.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. And I have to say that I stopped watching the news years ago, simply because the news isn't the news. It's somebody's paid for opinion that they're just splatting forth, and people take it as being fact, but it hasn't been fact for years. And I'm not even sure, honestly, if it ever was that factual. But I've actually found myself in places where there is a film crew, and they film a thing, and I see it later and it's on the news. This happened some years ago. I was actually in Israel, funnily enough, and I witnessed a demonstration going on, and the news were there, and they panned in the cameras and everything. And then when it showed up on the screen, it was this big riot and da-da-da. And I'm like, no, there were like 12, maybe 15 people. I was there. I saw it. But that's not what they show you on the screen, right? They make it look like a much bigger deal. And I was quite shocked to see that in action. The other time I experienced this was I lived in Bangladesh during a massive flood, cholera epidemic, and the nursing I mentioned was tropical diseases nursing. So, hey, this is my wheelhouse. Cool. But I saw what was on TV about this, and then I saw the reality because I was there, and the two things were not the same. All the aid that the world sent to Bangladesh, and there was tons of it coming in, I have to say. First of all, the politicians took their graft because that's how it works there. And then it would end up in the markets. I would see these big containers of milk powder saying gift from the people of Australia, and they're selling it. There were blue tarpaulins from the UN that were being sold. So what happened in reality was none of this stuff got to the people who it was supposed to get to. But the aid organizations weren't saying that because they wanted more money and more stuff coming in. So I can go controversial all day long on this, but I've been there and seen it. And it's like, yeah, you're lying. This is not what you're putting on TV is not what's happening.
We need more people to be saying that, though, because immediately, like you said before, the minute you say something that's out of that mainstream media type thing, automatically you're labeled a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
And I'm like, hold on, it's not. I'm just asking a viable question that we should all be asking. I have found common sense is not common anymore, right? It is gone by the wayside. And when is it so bad to ask a question? I'm not saying that that is what's happening, but when you have stuff like you're saying, I was there. I see what's portrayed on the screen, and it is not what was happening when I was right there. It demands questions. Like you were saying, you love research. I don't think anyone in the media anymore research. I think they almost have a script that this is what this is the theme that we have to go after. And you look. I look at how could a country convince people to annihilate a race or a people, okay, in Nazi Germany, eliminating the Jews. And I'm like, well, that can never happen again, right? But you see in the propaganda of the different things happening where people want everything in a 45-second video. Don't put anything more than that, because our attention span's 45 seconds. No one reads an article anymore, and no one does the research, but we just fill ourselves. And I have incredibly more peace and more joy by not I haven't watched TV now in 2.5 years, other than I will go out and watch, a sporting event, football. I can't get off of football and stuff like that. But although this year I don't think I watched an entire game all
I
year,
love
but
hockey.
I will still follow that, or watch the Heat or something like that. But I don't watch news. I love the meme that says, when I was growing up, we actually had someone on the TV that actually just gave us the news and didn't give us an opinion. His name was Walter Cronkite.
Yep.
And it's just like no one knows that name anymore. No one understands, because it's not news. It's opinions constantly thrown at us.
Yep, absolutely. And it's scripted opinions that are dictated by the people who own that particular media. And it fulfills their agenda. Good news doesn't sell. Shock horror does. And,
Yep.
if you're given the fodder for it, then you'll use it, which is what we see right now. There is no rational looking at what's going on right now. It's blown up out of proportion. But I do have a behavioral perspective on why people can't talk. And that is because we have lost the ability to separate ourselves from our opinions and ourselves from what's being discussed. So if you disagree with me, that means you don't like me and I'm wrong. And now I have to defend myself. So I'm going to yell louder than you do. And if you're interested, guys, have a look at Adlerian psychology. And it's fascinating. Adler was basically saying that, look, if you have to convince somebody else of your opinion, it means, first of all, you're insecure in your opinion, but secondly, that you're in an unequal relationship in that you need to be dominant. So I have to convince you that I'm right, and then you're subservient to me because you changed your opinion to mine. And there's a whole behavioral thing about this, but it stems from insecurity in who you are and the fact that you can hold an opinion and discover that it's incorrect. And people can't do that now. They just cannot be wrong. They cannot understand that your information is incomplete. So let me add to that and see what you come up with. We could both end up with a different perspective, but you can't if you insist on being right. And as soon as you insist on being right, you've kind of lost the whole perspective. It's just like with parents, I tell them, don't argue with your kid because your child has all day to argue. Their point is they're trying to establish something. And if you are forcing your will on them, they have to fight back because they're trying to find their boundaries. So don't fight with the kid, you'll always lose. And if you're yelling at somebody about your opinion being right, or if you insist, like, this is the way politics is and you're wrong, nobody has ever in the history of ever been persuaded by this. But everybody's yelling at everybody because they need to be right. And that is a basic behavioral thing that we've lost the ability to stand as a human being separate from our opinions. I like to tell people, don't believe everything you think. You might not be right. I might not be right.
Right.
Well, we've all become the
Built
hero of the story.
from a media perspective.
We've each become the hero of our story, and
I'm interested in your media perspective, Bill.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be the center of attention too. I mean, I do some coaching groups, and somebody will get the microphone and they start talking, and there's an awful lot of words, but they're not really going anywhere. And you sort of, okay, I need to bring this to a conclusion because it's unproductive. We're not moving forward. But the person talking doesn't really get that. It's just that they have their moment to talk. So the words keep coming out, but the meaning isn't there. And nobody calls them on it typically. I don't have the patience for it. So honestly, yeah, I do call them on it. Because endless words with no direction are uninteresting to me.
Yeah.
And it's not a conversation. It's not
Right.
back and forth. No one's learning anything other than what the one person is sitting there spewing. And again, that's go back to my debate class. That's not, there are rules for debate, right? You have a certain amount of time to speak. You have a certain amount of time to listen, and then you have a certain amount of time to process the point that the person's making and either counter or whatever. Those rules of debate have been thrown out the window. It's I'm right, boom, you're blocked, you're this, and I'm going to go talk to more people who think the way I do, and they're all going to pat me on the back because I just blocked you and told you how bad you were. Woohoo,
Right? 100%. And the other thing that we've lost is the ability to listen, to actually listen for the content, rather than listening to say, okay, can you stop talking now? I have to respond. I have a reply. Stop talking. And that is awful because you see it all over the place. And, sometimes I'll say something a little bit outrageous just to see if the other person picks up on it even. Like, are you listening to me? Have you heard anything I just said? And typically, if they ride over that with their response, it's like, yeah, you weren't listening, were you? And then what's the point in continuing? If that person cannot pay attention, then why are we even discussing something? What's the point? There isn't one. You're just waiting to tell me what you think, which has nothing to do with what I just said.
Yeah. Well, I know
Well,
I
Bill's
have to work
the art of
hard
listening.
to. Well, I have to work hard to do it. I have myself that ADD stuff, and so my brain is constantly trying to move to the next thing. But I know that I have to listen first, and like you were saying, Jeffrey, it's got to be listen, then process, then speak. You can't, but most people skip the listening part, go straight to processing, and when a moment happens, when when they can speak, boom, that's what they're going to do. So they never actually listen to what you said. They listen to what they got what they thought you said and processed a response for it. And it's not good active listening.
And often they just get what they expected you to say as well. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing, is it might not bear any resemblance to what you just said, but they've already formed an answer to what they think you're going to say. And so, it can be very interesting to watch if you're in the frame of mind to do that. Just, what happens if I go, left field now? What are you going to do with that? What happens if I, and sometimes I do that. It's just a little bit of playing on my part. If I'm really getting the message that this person is on an agenda and they're not actually listening to anything, they don't have to agree with me, but I would like the conversation to be moving back and forth rather than I go this way and they're going that way.
Fruitful. You want it to be fruitful. You want to get something out of it, right? It's one of the things that I've learned over the past year and a half, 2 years through many different things and buying my company back and some of the volunteer stuff that I do is I can be right, but the way I express myself in being right prevents accomplishing what I hope to accomplish. So, because of whether it's a sarcastic comment or wallowing in the fact that I am right instead of, so now because of my comments, I'm putting that person on the defensive and not getting to the point where maybe we can find a common ground. So even the times that I am right, the way I act or the way I present being right affects whether we achieve what we're trying to achieve and have someone become aware or things of that nature. And that's a hard thing. Again, that's a lot of pride and a lot of the things that we were just talking about of how people, no one wants to be wrong. No one wants to be, and that's the amazing thing. It's the follow the science, all the stuff that we've been through with COVID and the people that are out there. It's like, hold on, I can pull up from your social media what you said. It's obviously not the case, but you're still not apologizing or you're still not going to this route. And that's scary. When people are it's more important to be right and even if they know they're wrong to still fight it, then how is there any positive change that can be accomplished? Because we learn more from our mistakes, don't we? Our successes, we go like this, but I've always learned more from my mistakes than I have from my successes. And
100%.
if no one wants to identify that they've ever made a mistake, no one's going to learn anything, right?
That is where the gold is when things screw up. That's like, okay, that's the good stuff. Now, what do I get out of this? But you have to be secure enough in who you are to be able to do that. Otherwise, it becomes a threat. And, I have found too that when somebody's had a lifelong belief, even if it wasn't theirs, somebody gave it to them when they were kids and they took it on board. If you challenge that, they lose the plot. Like they get really upset because everything they have done predicated on that belief now has to be re-examined. And most people are not prepared to do that. I love finding people who are, simply not because I want to tip them up, but just there's growth there. There's potential for growth if you're willing to say, I always believed that, and actually I've changed my mind. I'm not sure I do believe that. But going into quantum mechanics just for a moment, and I promise not to get too geeky, but
Yeah.
quantum mechanics, it says that there is a field of infinite possibilities around you, but you cannot see everything. So what you get is what you can focus on. There's a part of the brain called the reticular activating system, and that is the thing that gives you what you focus on. So if you just bought a red truck and you go outside in your shiny new red truck, you are going to see red trucks everywhere because your brain, that part of your brain says, oh, you like red trucks. Okay, cool. Here, have some more. And it shows you those things. So if your perspective on life is a particular way, so I typically, go out there and say, look at politics, for example, right? So if you're right wing and you view things in a right wing way, whatever fits into that category, you will see all the things that verify that, all the things that give you more of that. And yes, it keeps you in your comfort zone. Exactly the same thing if you're left wing, you will get that set of information and those things that reinforce your views. So when those two sides yell at each other, they're not on the same trajectory. They're not in the same place at all. And given that each one just wants the other one to know they're wrong, you can't get anywhere because the field of vision, the perspective is completely different. And the first step is to know that that's a thing. And then the second one is to consider, what would it be like if I focused that way instead of that way? What would I see? And start looking at things a little bit differently. I like to play and sort of experiment a little bit. I mean, I told somebody recently who was very right wing, I said, look, I don't have a political party that I like. So, there's no point yelling at me. There isn't one I like. What are you going to do with that? Fascinating. whole language shifts, like everything changes completely because they don't know what to do with me. How can they yell at me when I said, but I don't like either of them? How are you going to yell at me? You need to try and convince me that your set of views are the ones that I should align with. Better be good, because frankly, I'm not thrilled with either of them. So what are you going to give me? What are you going to give me? But when you step out of the norm, people get really unnerved by it, and they're like, what do I do with you? What? And they'll find something to pick on, like, well, you're foreign. Like, actually, I'm an American citizen now. But, okay. And, yeah, well, you're not from here. And are you going to give me something a little more solid? But they're like looking for straws to hang on to put me in a box. And I won't go in the box. So it's a kind of fun experiment that I do sometimes.
No, that's absolutely awesome, and an American that goes outside of the borders and actually sees other parts of the world and other different things is a rarity as well. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible to me. But what you were talking about again, when you give someone the opportunity to, you're learning stuff as well. That's what a fruitful conversation is all about. I love this study you were talking about, right wing and left wing, and I love how everyone tells me when I say something, oh, you're just Fox News, and I haven't watched TV in 2 years. Don't tell you. But again, like, it serves their purpose. Put me in a box. It's very easy to say that. But I love the study where they took someone who was totally right wing and totally left wing, and they didn't let the people know, but they knew other backgrounds, and they found like a common ground, whether it was gardening or sports. And they sat the people in the room and they started this conversation, and they found out that they had so many things that they were similar about, more so than their differences, because they started on common ground. They didn't have this preconceived notion of, this is a right-wing person, this is a left-wing person, I'm never going to agree with them. They started on something that they had something in common with. And then when you ended the conversation and you said, you realize that he voted for Trump, or, this is a left. Yeah. Then it was like, you see their face and they're like, what? I just had a 30-minute conversation with someone who I would have blocked the minute that I knew. Yeah. Wow, you didn't let someone put someone in a box. You didn't let someone tell you how you're supposed to think of someone. And wow, how about that? You guys had a lot more in common than you thought. I'll never forget, Amy Grant said it the best. She was on Oprah Winfrey. She said, if we all knew what the other person was going through, we would all be nicer to everyone. If we all knew what battles someone was fighting, if we all knew, because life is not easy, life is hard. Okay, it's a total learning process. We're totally learning. We're fighting demons from the past, things that happened. That teacher who pulled you up on stage that said you're never going to be anything, Michaela. Those types of things. If people knew that you went through that, well, people might be able to understand a little more and might be a nicer person, which is, a concept that no one's getting these days. And I just don't know why, other than if you can divide us, it makes it easier.
Yep.
Yeah, the people in charge, the people in control don't want us to get together, because then we might accomplish something, and that would probably mean the loss of their power.
Oh, I have very strong views on that one, and frankly, it needs a big shake-up, not just here, but other countries too. Like, I look at Canada, I look at the UK, and man, hot mess everywhere. Like, what was working, and even that's questionable, a couple of 100 years ago, isn't working now. It needs to change, because we are not the same people. We are not the same species that we were. And God help us, the kids that are coming up now who are wired to the machine, they are in the matrix. This is a reality. This is not the same species that we are. These are very different kids. They have to be parented very differently. But larger than that, the countries have to be run very, very differently. And having lobby groups in charge of our health, for example, and really, you could get me started on that one, and I can go there. On my own podcast, I have episodes about the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and the diet industry all being in cahoots, because the food industry makes us sick, the pharmaceutical industry keeps us there, and the diet industry basically aids and abets them both. And what's missing is truth. There is actually a study, and I would love for you both to just Google this and check it out, but agnotology, agnotology, agnotology. And it is the study of how politics, marketing, all the big money machines basically manipulate information either by withholding or with releasing the type of information that sows doubt, so that when the facts are out there, you question them because they're giving you counter studies that may or may not exist, probably don't, but they're sowing seeds of doubt. And all of that keeps people in a state of not knowing. And so the ones with the best marketing get to bring in the money, right? So I actually am running a coaching program right now, which is behavior and food, behavior and nutrition. And it's whole nutrition. It's regenerative meat, the beef that's grown as naturally as possible, the animal in normal circumstances without all the hormones, etc., etc. Eating that, because if you're eating animal products, you're not eating the animal only, you're eating what it ate. So if it's being fed stuff that's bad for you, this is what you're getting. The water that you're having, as Jeffrey said, it's full of, like, we don't even want to go there, and I can't use that kind of language right now. But, it's full of stuff we don't want it full of.
Right.
And this is all being manipulated. So they use tricks of the trade to get through the labeling process, for example. Like, did you know there are 257 names of sugar? I kid you not, 257 names for sugar. Now, why would you do that? First of all, if you're looking at a label, the ingredients go down in order of inclusion, right? You got most of this, then that, then that, then that. If you have 8 different names for sugar in your one label, those things appear way lower down. And so it doesn't look like you are getting sugar. They might not even call it sugar. It might be called a bunch of other things that doesn't have the word sugar in there. But you think you're getting a healthy product because it says so. They are lying. It is an outright lie. But they're manipulating people to think that they're doing the best for themselves they can. And this is why we have a very sick, and I mean unwell, society, and why the healthcare system is groaning under the weight of treating symptoms and not actually healing anybody. When I first did my nurse training centuries ago, our question to incoming patients would be, do you take any medication? And if that person said yes, be like, hang on a minute, let me find the form, and you'd go get the form and you'd write down their meds, and it would be 2 or 3 things maybe. Now, if you walk into your doctor's office, the question is, what medication are you on? So the predication of that sentence is, you're on meds, what are they? And if you ever try telling them, I don't take anything, watch the reaction. You'll get
happens all the time.
What?
You're 58 years old. You're not taking any medicine? Nope.
Right? Then have you had these shots? Have you done that? They start looking for, where's your anchor in the medical world? It didn't used to be that way. It has not always been that way. It's that way now. And people are on medications that have side effects, that they get medications for the side effects, that get medications for the side effects. And you end up with this stacking, and people are in double digits. What are we doing? The food products and the behaviors that are manipulated using agnotology, using this system of tricking people, basically. They're selling a lifestyle to you. If you look at an advertisement for Cheerios, I mentioned the brand. Okay, those oat O's. If you look at an advertisement for that, the kitchen the kitchen is white and clean. The kids are happy, smiling. They're dressed properly. You know, they're wearing clothes. They've brushed their teeth. All the things. Even the dog isn't shedding, right? Like everything looks awesome. There isn't a coffee ring in sight, and everybody's smiling and happy. Why? The only thing that's there is that bowl of cereal. So you consume that, and life is good, and you're going to get this lifestyle. That's the message that people get. And it's given to you all the time. It's given to you all the time. And so people go buy that cereal. Read the ingredients sometime and then throw away the cereal and eat the box, because there's more in the cardboard box for you than there is for the cereal.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
And
Yeah.
I can and do go on about this at length, because it makes me mad that people are being intentionally manipulated and lied to. And people think that the Food and Drug Administration is going to make sure that everything's safe for you. Well,
No.
there are probably two people sitting in a dark basement office somewhere with next to no funding and no mandate to do that. The only things they look at are stuff that enough deaths have happened that they're going to now look at it. Otherwise, stuff doesn't get checked.
Right.
So
that people start paying attention to it, right? Exactly. I mean, I go through the same thing. You know, I see all these studies that have just come out in the past 2 months about the amount of plastic particles in bottled water, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. I've been in this industry for 15 years, okay? And it didn't take me long to realize that I could go on a sales call and I could take a case of water and sit it out in the hot Florida sun for a week. And that bottle of water that had 150 TDS, if I opened it right away, after a week out in the sun, would be about 300 TDS. And I could keep it sealed and crack. So I could, now I start telling people that, I mean, the bottled water industry, the myth of the bottled water industry, they did a great job of educating us on how bad our tap water is and how much the government's been putting it in. But they didn't let us know that they're basically doing the same thing, and they're draining our aquifers and putting it in a horrible plastic that's leaching into your water that you're drinking. Okay, it was the marketing ploy of the century, because bottled water is now the #1 beverage sold in the world. Okay, so when Bloomberg talking about the sugars and the corn syrup, and when Bloomberg came out and attacked the bottling companies, Coke, Pepsi, for their beverages, they said, "Oh, we got to do something." They went to water and they started marketing that. But 10 years ago, when I was telling people about what I could do to manipulate the TDS without ever opening the bottle, just by putting that bottle in the sun. Or someone like Sheryl Crow gets vilified because she says, "I used to drink the hot plastic bottles in my car. I believe that's why I got breast cancer." Oh, now all of a sudden she's vilified, right? And you're a conspiracy theorist, Jeff. Quit being a fear monger. You're trying to sell your machine. How dare you tell us this? And now, and what's amazing to me, right, is once that dam breaks, all of a sudden Columbia, Rutgers University, NIH, it all come out like once someone breaks that seal, then everyone's like, "Oh, I was on this too." All of these studies just came out in the 1 month. No, we all knew. It's like the best control group in the world, and it's large, that you could see regarding vaccines and things of that nature are the Amish. Okay, the Amish don't get vaccines. Don't eat any of the processed foods. They grow everything. Everything's healthy. Do you know they have no autism, no ADHD, nothing? Now the government's been testing, going and doing data on them, but we never see any of it released. Okay, but why? Because no one's asking the questions, and the minute that you do ask the question, you get vilified. So that's I speak that I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in just the education, just this, having a conversation about it. Maybe someone who is so close-minded might hear this and say, maybe I should start thinking about that. Really? The Amish? Did Jeff really just say that? Well, let me go look and see. Maybe we can do some research. Yeah, it's there. Okay? They have no autism. Okay? So that's not to say that the vaccines are absolutely a cause, but it may be something that we might want to look into a little bit. The food we eat and the nutrition, like you were saying, might be a little something that these Monsanto and the GMA, the chemicals, so we don't have weeds, so we make it easier to grow these things. Maybe we should go back to doing things with a little more work instead of the easier way. It just might be a question. That's all. I'm not saying 100% that it is, but can we take some time to research it a little bit and work together? Because we're all the ones that have to eat this stuff.
I think it's a really good question. And for example, corn, you mentioned Monsanto, so that takes me to corn. If you look at the way corn grows now, it doesn't look the same way it used to.
No way.
When you were a kid, the cornfields were high and you run through them and they get flattened.
Knee-high in July.
And it gets flattened, right? Now it's short, stocky, and that corn will kill any insect that bites it for a kickoff. It's been bred that way, right? And it's a hardier version. So I have discovered doing my research that corn has 5% of alien, as in not corn, DNA, right? It is 5% of it is not recognizable as corn. Now that might not sound like a lot, but when you consume that corn, your body says, I don't know what this is. I don't know where to put this. And so the liver tries to metabolize what you're giving it, and it can't. It can only get so far. Then it has to store it, and not everything gets peed out. So the fat cells that you lay down are actually full of all kinds of stuff that the liver cannot detoxify, it cannot metabolize, it can't use to build more of you. So when your body needs to repair its systems, when your body needs to regenerate, which we're doing all the time, that's how human beings are, it's not working with adequate materials. The stuff you're giving it, because it's not recognizable as nutrition, it can't be used. And so it gets stored and you get sicker and sicker. And what happens is people's level of wellness drops, but universally it drops. So you don't realize how lousy you feel until you do something like the coaching program I'm running right now that takes you to a level where you're like, wait a minute, I used to feel like that all the time and now I'm here. What's going on? And it's a journey. It really is a process. And it's like there's a minefield out there because there's so much information to lead you in the wrong direction. But there's also a lot of really good information that shows you exactly what's going on. And I'm all about that. Like, I dive into that stuff because I want to know where we've been lied to and where things are damaging us. Like, you know, that hard fat that you can buy? I'm going to have to name it. Crisco, right? That's cottonseed oil. Did you know that? Cottonseed oil is not for people, it's for machines.
Yep.
But we've been using that instead of lard, which is actually healthier for you if the animal's okay. You know, we've been told to use that because it's cheap. So much food or food products are out there because they are cheap to make. They stay on the shelf longer. You know, if you want to buy certain little cakes in wrappers, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, you know, those things, you want to buy those. They're going to outlast you, the cockroaches, and the Holocaust because they have a shelf life that's extended years. Why? Because everything that the body could consider nutrition has been taken out and replaced with chemicals. So whenever you see something that says enriched or fortified, what that means is they took all the good stuff out because it shortens the shelf life and they put the chemicals in.
Yeah.
Well, the news is it might say vitamin C, but it's not vitamin C. It's a chemical facsimile. And your body says, nope, I don't know what to do. No, not doing that. Nope. And it's such a short space of time that this has happened in. Our grandparents didn't eat this stuff. We didn't eat this stuff as kids. We're getting it
really
now.
not designed to eat so much of what we eat anyway. Even if you take out the chemical and artificial part, or the alien part, as you put it, Michaela. I mean, we're designed to be hunters and gatherers. You know, we're supposed to
Yep.
be eating some meat and nuts and berries and that kind of stuff. The corn and rice and the stuff that has to be farmed in order to get it in enough quantity to be able to sustain a population. That stuff came later. You know, it wasn't about about bread and popcorn. You know, back our ancestors when they were establishing what it is we're supposed to be eating. I mean, I like corn. Corn is tasty. It's sweet and it's fun, and
Of course it
and
is.
all that good stuff. And I plan to grow it. I have the seeds, but that's not what we're designed to eat to begin with. You know, and
It
our
might
bodies just
surprise
don't know
you.
what to do with all this stuff that we're putting into it.
It might surprise you, but right now I am eating all meat. I don't eat
Okay.
vegetables at all. Now, I have tried many things in my lifetime. I've been vegan, I've been vegetarian, I've tried all the things, but I have an allergy condition that was so bad, anything I ate was having me break out in hives.
Oh wow.
And the doctor said, look, you've had a couple of rounds of steroids. I can't give you anything else. I do not know what to do with you. And I figured, okay, let me try something I haven't done before. So I've been eating all meat, eggs, fish, but that's it. I have no vegetables. I don't have anything else. And guess whose food allergies went away? Now, is this something I'm going to do forever? Probably not. But it is something I'm doing right now, and it's working for me health-wise. I dropped 20 pounds. I dropped my allergies, and I'm sleeping better. So I'll take it. Thank you. But that might not be what somebody else anticipates as being healthy. So where does the story you have about what is healthy, where does that come from? And when you look at the my plate thing or the pyramid or whatever shape they want to put it in, it doesn't matter. There's always this big chunk of carbohydrates in there that are refined. It's grains, it's bread, it's rice, it's stuff like that. I would call that filler food. And what you actually have that's nutritious is the rest of the stuff on the plate, hopefully. But that stuff is just going to fill you up. It's not helpful. And bread, white rice, these things turn to glucose in your blood faster than table sugar does. So you might as well just have a spoon of sugar and forget the bread, because it'll take longer to turn into sugar.
Makes the medicine go down, right?
Yeah.
Teaspoon of sugar.
Mary Poppins.
They sang about that.
I could do the Mary Poppins thing.
And there you go. That's the whole food to pharmaceutical to right there. Mary Poppins was selling it to us. How about that?
I actually have an advertisement that I cut out of an old National Geographic. It was 1970, and it's a very slim woman with a glass of Coca-Cola and a straw, and the top says, "Sugar, it's the best appetite suppressant and it's good for you." And that's 1970, and it's a legit advertisement from National Geographic. I have kept that little puppy because it's just like every now and then I bring it out. You can't trust what you see. You can't trust what people tell you. You need to do the reading. You need to find some credible sources. And, if somebody wants to do the research, I'll typically give them an idea of how to begin. Like if you're looking at research articles, look at, obviously, search for the title. Look at the abstract at the top. That'll give you the overview. It's a quick summary. Then look at who paid for it, because that makes all the difference. And then look at the conclusion. Does it make sense? And you also want to know how many people were involved, because that study on vaccines and autism, there were 8 kids. It was disproven. The doctor who did that study lied and has since been struck off. And yet that one study will not go away. And it's stopping people from looking at what could be the real causes. Now, there's epigenetics, getting back into the geeky stuff for a minute. The way I look at that is you have your genes, and then kind of sitting on top like a hat is your epigenetics, and it's like a light switch. So you have predispositions. You're born with this setup, but it's up to your environment, including your food and your water and your stress levels and all the rest of it, as to which switches are on and which switches are off. So you might be born with a predisposition for diabetes, for example, but you don't ever have to have it if you don't have the processed foods, the ultra processed foods, that kind of thing that flips that switch. So this is where you're seeing so many things happen. And I would love for more research in that department when it comes to cancers, when it comes to autism, when it comes to all the things that we currently have issues with. I would like to see how the food affects the epigenetics to be looked at. And we just lost him. Eek.
Did we lose Jeffrey?
I think we did. Hopefully he'll come back.
Hopefully. Yeah, I just got a flash that it was trying to reconnect me. But anyway.
Well, I don't know what's
one of the things that occurs to me is that so much of what happens, what does get done, what does get studied and looked at and solved, has to do with organization. People can organize under making a living, and so these companies can put whatever they want out because it'll sell, and they can organize under the money. Families and get together because their kids have the same illness or condition. That's why we don't get potholes filled, because we can't organize around that, because we only notice it every now and again. But yeah, right. If you can organize
I'm still here, but I don't know what happened to
this whole
Michaela.
thing with trying to ban
awesome
TikTok, or possibly ban TikTok. The possibility of it not happening is pretty good, because they're already organized.
Internet.
They're organized in advance of the problem. The people who want TikTok, I have yet to give the Chinese government my information, but that'll probably happen this year because of marketing problems. Because of marketing, but
I imagine they have it already.
Yeah, I know.
They will have it already.
All my stuff is out there anyway. That's why I get phone calls at all hours of the night.
I'm not on TikTok either, but it's just I only have so much bandwidth. So there's so many places I'm going to go, and that doesn't really yell out to me. So that's the main reason I'm not particularly paying attention to it. But you have to do so much searching under the surface on everything these days, because agnotology is a thing. It's out there, and it's not a conspiracy when there's a study for it and you can go find it. The articles are out there, and they are discoverable. And googlescholar.com is free. Mm-hmm. So you can look up an awful lot of research right there. You don't have to have access to a university's library or anything. You can go there and find a lot of things. But always, I would say, look at who paid for it, because that makes the difference. Do you think the Dairy Marketing Board are going to pay for something that says, hey, did you know milk actually causes osteoporosis because it's acidic and it leaches calcium out of the bones? Did you know that? No, they're not going to put that out there. No. But you can find that research. And you can find the correlations. If you look at China, mentioning them a moment ago, their rates of osteoporosis are really low, and they don't drink milk. Over here, the rates are really high. And guess who drinks a ton of milk? And you can trace that back to, I think it's the 30s, it might be earlier, when there was so much milk being produced, it couldn't all be used. And so the government stepped in and said, we're going to make sure that, we advertise this as a good thing for everybody, and we'll set a price. So, the farmers are happy because they have their price set. People are being convinced all the time it's good for them, so they consume it left, right, and center. And actually, the whole thing is a financial transaction. It's not to do with your health at all. If it was, they would be promoting it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
pretty wild, huh?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah,
Hi, Jeffrey.
it's all
Glad
back
you're
to
back.
the
I think
organizing.
I lost you guys for a moment there.
Yep, for a minute. Yep. You might have another Riverside tab open, Jeffrey. It's suggesting to me that I have you close it.
Yeah, I just closed it. I thought that,
Okay.
but I don't know.
It's
I
probably
lost you. It
fine.
said
It
the
seems
internet
fine.
was down or something.
Yep.
And okay.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us.
No, I
Well,
didn't.
glad you're back.
but yeah,
I told you I was not technology savvy. I warned you at the beginning of this that technology and I aren't like this. So
yeah,
but
it's all
I
back
thought it was
to
awesome what you.
it's all back to the organizing
Go ahead, Bill.
factor. Yeah, and money is a strong draw for people. We want to earn a living so we can support ourselves and buy more stuff. As George Carlin once said, it's a home is just a place for my stuff. And so this is all my stuff.
It's a pity we can't hear what he thinks about today.
Yeah,
I would
no
love
kidding.
to know what he thinks about today, but obviously we can't. But yeah, I think he'd have some shows worth visiting. Yeah, I like George Carlin. But
Yeah.
the other thing with money talking and the organization, think back to when we were first told that cholesterol is a problem and that fat is bad for you. There is no lobby for fat, right? There is no group for fat. There is, however, a very powerful one for sugar.
Yep.
So the food products that are presented as being low fat, check the label. The sugar's going to be sky high. There's going to be saccharin, which has been shown to have links to cancer causing. And, that's been out there for 20 years now, maybe more. But it keeps getting fought back, right? Because the people who are producing artificial sweeteners are powerful. They have money. The people with the sugar, same thing. Fat? No, there's no lobby for fat. So they're going to argue eat more beef, right? But typically that's via a fast food place that they're going to send you, these days anyway. So the marketing, who's paying for the marketing? Who's paying for the stance that the government takes that this stuff is good for you? Because if they actually looked at grains and investigated what are the properties of grains, grains are covered in anti-nutrients, like naturally. It doesn't want to be eaten. It's a seed it wants to grow. So it doesn't want you to eat it. The exceptions are things like strawberries, where the seeds are on the outside and they're supposed to go through real fast so that you deposit them somewhere else. But most plant things don't want to be eaten. Grains, especially so. Add to that the grains we grow now are not what our grandparents grew. This is a problem. And yet it's there as something everybody should have in their food. And to go back to diabetes again for a moment, recently the guidelines for diabetics to eat well was like 60% carbs. What? Really? Yeah. I would like to see where that came from. I would like to see the research for that, and I question it. I'm not convinced at all that that's necessary or helpful. I think it's probably unhelpful. But, this is something we're facing now. And again, in my nursing, in the beginning, I never ever met a child with type 2 diabetes. Very occasionally would I come across an adult, and they were usually in their 70s or 80s. And now, everybody, like it's more common than not that people are heading that way. What happened? It's not that people are lazy. It's not that people are making poor choices intentionally. It's that what they're choosing from is causing damage. And I get real mad about that. That winds me up a lot.
They got a pill for that, though. They got a pill for that you can take for the type 2 diabetes. And you can lose weight, too. How about that, And by the way, when we grew up, all of us look to be about, in the same time period. You couldn't put pharmaceuticals on TV. You couldn't put
Right.
alcohol on TV. There were things because, and the same thing now, with Pfizer, these you get addicted to those advertising dollars. Those advertising dollars are what makes the programs go. So you are now, it's not money, it's the love of money that's the root of all evil. I mean, money is a great tool to do things, but it's the love of it that is the problem. And Michaela, I was going to say, you were talking about changing your diet and everything before I lost. I mean, I see, I guess it was about 6 months ago, you had the weight you've lost and how you look great. And I went through the same sort of transition about, a little over a year and a half ago, and I found what you said is so powerful. You don't know you feel horrible. You don't know that you're tired because you're so used to it until you start making a change, or until you listen to someone that, and mine was, one of my now he's a partner, but he's been with me for 15 years building these machines, and he looked at me and he says, "What's happened to you? You are a horrible representation of our company. Look at you. Your belly's hanging out of your shirt." He's like, he goes, I've never seen you like this. And again, the battles of the business and the trying to get the business back, you get so focused on different things, you don't realize what you're doing to yourself, and you're eating the things that are simple and easy, and you don't realize that you're tired all the time because that's normal to you, right? And so, I've ended up, I started with doing intermittent fasting and just basic exercising and things of that nature, and really looking and stopping every day and picking up the fruits and the vegetables that, organic, having my own garden, growing my own, doing things of that nature. And it's incredible. You're like, I can't believe I was living my life that way. But it
Right.
got to be like that comfortable blanket that you snuggle up to. That's how you were processing things. That's how you were going through life. And again, and then basically taking the time. I really believe, as much as the physical, you also have to feed the spiritual. You have to take time, that quiet time, that evaluation, that processing, like we were talking about, Bill. And really, for myself, it was to take an hour. I moved closer to the beach. The beach time took an hour and a half every day to just talk to God. And it strengthened me, and it guided me. I see, I see, and you were with the Buddhists and the monks and the stuff. So and the human design, and so one of the questions I did want to ask you, well, who is the designer? If it's human design, there has to be a designer, right? So I was interested in all that, but that's what, when all of a sudden I realized, I had to feed both physically and spiritually, and both were as important. And to take that time where I was always so busy, I didn't have the time. But by taking that time, I became much more efficient and much more better at doing the things that I needed to do. So, I know we're going over, but I did want to ask you that question, because I'm so fascinated by all of the research that you've done in all of the other areas. So if you didn't mind me asking that question, we're not supposed to talk about religion and politics. I for one can't stand religion. I for one can't stand religion, because religion is man trying to control other men using this stuff. I believe in a relationship and spirituality, and I love the movie The Book of Eli, right? Because the evil guy wanted the Bible because he could use it to control people, right? But it's not about that. It's not about, we'll always mess things up. But when you can sit and talk about and have a conversation. That's what strengthens me. And I'm also a firm believer. I hate most memes, but this one has Jesus pulling this guy back who's yelling with the Bible and hits him with the Bible. And he says, I told you to win souls, not win arguments. It's just like, you're not supposed to be yelling. Or as Gandhi said, I love your Jesus, but I hate his followers. Right. That's absolutely true. So I hate religion. I love spirituality. I love talking with my Savior, my Creator. But I see all of your research and all the different things. So I just was interested in your opinion on that.
So human design, who designed the human, is up to your conception of what that would be. So it's a higher power. It's the universe around you. It's whatever the energy is in that. It's your version. So in your case, you would probably not hesitate to say, this is God's design. And who's to argue with you? Because God is the energy. It's the source,
Agreed.
the universe, right? However you want to look at that. And that is where that information comes from. Whether it's true or not. Somebody asked me on a different podcast one time, how do you let people know that it's true? Like, how do you convince people? And I said, I don't convince anybody of anything. I'm not interested to do that. Why would I want to do that? I'm going to tell you what I see for you, and you go figure out if that's true or not. I have yet to have anybody tell me that it's incorrect. There was one person, and there were a couple of things off. So we went back and looked at the original information, and she'd done the wrong time zone. Like the times were incorrect. Right. So we changed that, did it again, and it was like, okay, now we're on point. But it's one of those things I can't explain why it works. I just know that is my experience, that it works for people. And when you know how your energy flows naturally, it's so much easier for you to make the best decisions for you. So, for example, for a generator, as I mentioned, I'm a generator. If I'm doing something that's not aligned for me, it's just not correct, then it's like pushing on a door that needs to be pulled. It doesn't matter how hard I try. It is not going to work. It just isn't going to happen. And it might be I need to do it differently, or it might need me to go in a different direction. But I get the sign very clearly that I'm pushing on a pull door. That is not for me. So rather than spend time struggling with that, I'm going to stop and look around and say, okay, what do I need to do instead? And I'll go do that thing. So, for example, when I came to the US, I thought, no brainer, I'll go into nursing. That's cool. I've done it in, 3 countries. This will be my 4th. It's cool. So I went into nursing. Whoa, I ran away screaming after 3 weeks. I kid you not. I cannot do it here. It's the system here is just, there's so many things wrong with it. That is another podcast. But I actually gave up my registration after that and said, you know what? I'm out. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And I've run a medical clinic. Like, I've done a bunch of things, but not here, not the way it's run here. Not going to happen. One of the big issues is that insurance companies call the shots and not the medical professionals. And good Lord, how do you expect that to work? It works about as well as you could expect it to work, which is it doesn't. You have bean counters calling the shots, and they probably came out of high school, right? So, what is that? So I left. Anyway, that took me off track a little bit. But human design basically will give you your pathways of genius. So some people are more creative and they need to spend time staring at the water, lying in the sun, whatever it is. And that's when the insights drop in, the next move, the brilliant aspect of what you're doing will drop in. For another person, it's going to be when they're active. I can tell you which you are, and you go try it, right? But some people try really hard to do what they think society wants them to do and be structured and be, all spreadsheets and stuff. And it might be utterly wrong for you. Wouldn't it be nice to know that? And then you can just say, hey, I hated that anyway. I'm going to go over here instead, and you try it and you see. But we live in a society, particularly in the US, I have noticed this dramatically since I moved here, If you're not in the struggle bus, you're not trying hard enough. Like, why don't you have 3 jobs? Good
Right.
God, you got a full night's sleep? What's wrong with you? Like, why aren't you exhausted? This is terrible.
Right.
You only work 6 hours in a day or whatever it is. The narrative is you should be chugging coffee. And if you look at the advertisements for so many things, particularly computers and stuff, they will show you the person up at home in pitch black outside, right? And they're heading on their way to the office, and it's still dark, by the way. And then they show you them again at the end of the day, and it's freaking nighttime again. So this person has spent 12, 14 hours, whatever it is, at work, and they're still chugging coffee. And this is a good thing? This is promoted as being how you want to live your life? No wonder people have a problem and they eat from drive-thrus. Of course you do, because you don't have time to do anything else with 3 jobs. And it starts young. I know we're going over, but I have to throw this one out there because it's so important. But kids, when a kid is sick, right, and they stay home from school, you hope they stay home from school, then what happens is the teacher will send homework home for the kiddo to do. So the message you're giving them is you don't have time to heal. You don't have time to rest. Here, keep working. Now, that same kid is going to see their parent going to work even when they're sick because the boss isn't going to tolerate them taking time off. So where are you in that equation? You are so far down in importance that you aren't even on the list. You are not important. So long as you show up for work, so long as you get your schoolwork done, they don't care how healthy you are. They don't care if you're rested. And that's the message we start sending kids right from kindergarten. Like, why are you giving a kindergartner homework? Good grief. Their homework is to be a child. They should be playing. That's how they learn. Like, homework, if you can't get it done during school time, there's something up. Because we've already taken away things like music for the most part and recess for the most part. Do you know, for optimal brain health, a child needs to be outside 7 hours a day. They need to be doing stuff in their environment. They're lucky if they get 15 minutes. And then you expect this kid to do well. And they probably went to school on a donut and a Coke anyway. So now you're wondering why they're pinging off the walls. Well, as society goes, we have completely gone the wrong way. And it's all about the struggle and the speed, eat fast, get your drive-through, eat it while you're in the car, and then you can keep working and go to your next job. And whoopity-doo. Like, is that your life? Really? Is that living, or is that existing for somebody else's dollar? Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's
earlier
a problem.
when something Jeffrey said earlier, and you're reminding me of it, made me think of that we need to feed all the aspects of our humanity. Not just the need for work or food, but also our spirituality, our rest needs to be fed, and needs to be fed properly. One of the things that that the book I'm reading, the Emotionally Healthy Leader, is promoting is a Sabbath day of rest. And when he said that, I'm like, it's like he asked 2 questions. He asked, is the Sabbath rest important and of religious significance? And I said, well, of course it is. It's significant. It's godly. And then he's like, and do you do it? And I'm like, well, no, of course not. So I'm having to work to change my schedule. But yeah, it's important to feed all the aspects of our humanity. If you're drained, there's a reason for it. It's because you're not feeding something.
Right.
Yep.
It's so right. I mean, Bill, it's like I was going to be saying that. I mean, one of the big changes with me was taking that, and I took a Saturday and doing volunteering and going into nursing homes and stuff like that. And I tell you, it's more for me than the benefit that they get. I mean, I got to tell you, the love and the strength and the power that I get from that is better than closing any deal of selling a container full of water machines. It's the blessing, and that's the spiritual aspect. So and it's not a legalistic. It's not like, oh, I've got to do this. It's because you want to. It's because it's a part of you, and you know that your body and your spirit absolutely needs it. But what was most incredible to me was once I started doing that, it was amazing how my former boss scheduled so much stuff on Saturday, knowing that I had it, just to try and get me off of that.
Wow.
Well, you could be at this meeting. I'm like, you never scheduled a meeting on Saturday until I told you that Saturday was important and I'm doing all of these other things, right? So that was incredible. But again, I talk about, unless you're charitable or the efforts that you're trying to do feeds not only the physical but the spiritual, it's not effective. So I go through a lot of, you look at charity and effective charity. And I go to the example when Flint happened. Okay, Cher donated $1 million of bottled water to the community. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Absolutely, it's a good thing. People needed that immediately. And that's charity, right? But the fact remains that in 2 weeks, that $1 million worth of bottled water is gone. You've now created another ecological nightmare because you have $1 million of bottles that have to be recycled that we know aren't being recycled now because we're being lied to on all that. It's all over the place.
Yep.
And then you look and you see that Cher had a tour coming up, so she was in the news, so she sold more tickets. So was it really charity, or was it getting her name in before the tour? Not to say, again, that it wasn't important to get water there. But effective charity is when you go in and like you were talking about, Michaela, what's the theory of change? I'll never forget David Meyer, Joyce Meyer's son. Very proud when he took over Helping Hands as a young kid, the charitable organization, and he says, I have the best job in the world. I get to use this money to go help people. But his first thing that he did, and he was so proud of himself, was he went down to the Dominican Republic to this village, and he had chicken coops and chickens, because the sustainability, the chickens would create eggs over a long period of time and give them a sustainable. And he was proud. He left there, look at what I did. And he went back 6 months later to see nothing but empty chicken coops. And he said, what happened? And they said, well, the leader's daughter was getting married, and it's our tradition to throw a huge party, and what better way to show our leader how much we care for him than to cook all of these chickens. And he said, it was then I realized, if you don't understand the culture and the theory of change that you want to make in doing this, that it's not going to be effective. It's not going to be lasting. You're trying to break generational curses that have happened over generations after generations. So, you really have to go in, and I worked with World Vision on a lot of stuff, and they said, we don't want to see anything without a theory of change. So like the program that we're doing in Maca, it has beading, it has alternate energy classes. The water hub just isn't a place that you can go get water. We made sure that there's internet, so we can do programs, and because nature abhors a vacuum, right? So if you're taking and giving them 4.2 hours a day that they used to go to the River Noun to collect the water of the mothers, you've got to now fill that 4.2 hours with something that's going to affect the change in the things that have been bringing down that community. So it's and that's why, and I understand exactly what you're saying, Michaela. Who's to say what's right? So much of what you say is biblical, is like biblical foundations. So that's, I love it. All the stuff that you were talking about. And again, it's all about a personal relationship. So I'm not going to tell anyone, other than what I speak the truth, but listen as well and hear that. But it was such an enjoyment to spend this time with you guys, actually having a conversation about different points and different things, and seeing that we can all discuss and bring such viable points to fruition. And hopefully people that listen to this have learned something and might, take something away. And maybe I shouldn't be so, this person's this way and this person's that way, and give everyone a chance to speak and maybe listen a little bit.
You know what? I would love for you to go to charities and talk to them and explain to them about going in and understanding the culture first. When I was in Bangladesh, I actually went there to be in an orphanage, working with the kids in an orphanage. And then, I got to meet more and more local people. And this one woman, she took me on a walk, around Dhaka, the capital city. And she said, there's a problem with your kids in the orphanage. And I was like, oh, okay, tell me about it. And she said, well, see that girl over there? I know she's from the orphanage. And I said, how can you pick that out? We have a few hundred kids. And she said, because of the way she walks. She walks like a Westerner because you guys are coming over here and the kids are copying you. This means that she's going to be unmarriageable. And that is really, really important in Bangladeshi society.
Right.
Because if she's not marriageable, her remaining options are prostitution or possibly becoming a maid for a foreign family. And she isn't going to recognize that that's her limitation. So just from the walk, and then they're also listening to those of us that come over from Europe and the US and what have you. They're listening to our worldview and adopting it as theirs. And it doesn't fit.
Nope.
It doesn't fit in Bangladesh. They are in trouble then. And
Yep.
I realized that what I thought was a helpful move, and I did bring some meds with me. I did get some useful stuff done, but just by being there, that was damaging. And I was horrified to learn that I was like, oh my God, I am causing, I'm part of a problem here that I had no idea existed. And the charity who was running that orphanage, I think they didn't realize the extent of the problem, but there were other issues as well. Like, those letters you get, hey, my name's Fatima and I love drawing butterflies, yada, yada. The kids didn't write those. The volunteers wrote those. And a pretty kid would have 10 volunteers. An ugly kid wouldn't have any. It didn't matter because the money never got to them. It went to the boss organization. Right.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of flaws in that. And that kind of issue, that bothered me on one level. But the fact that kids were picking up my view and making it their own when that was going to screw them up in their society.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, I wish I'd known that because I wouldn't have gone there. I wouldn't have done that to them knowingly. And I think a lot of charities, they go in there because it looks good. Maybe they're making money some way. Prestige, whatever, they're a front for something, whatever it is, but I don't know that they realize the damage they're doing. And if you went in and talked to them, told them what you were just saying, maybe some of them would bother to learn first. And that would be so cool. One of the things they did at this orphanage, they were building a new orphanage to put more kids in. That in itself is problematic because the definition of an orphan in Bangladesh is someone whose father is dead or unable to work. The mother can still be alive.
Yeah.
And this kid is an orphan. So people would drop their kids off at the orphanage so that they wouldn't have to feed them. So that was a problem because it was breaking up families. But the second orphanage that was being built, there was a bunch of British engineers that went in there and they built houses that would look awesome in the UK, but they are not designed for the climate in Bangladesh. And one of the biggest disasters was they put Western toilets in there. They don't have the plumbing for that. There's zero plumbing. There's nowhere for that stuff to go. Yeah. And then people don't know how to use them. So they're trying to balance on the toilet seat with their feet falling off and hurting themselves. But also, there's nowhere to flush anything to. So it was a disaster. It was just like, good Lord, who approved this?
Right.
And that is an example of having no freaking clue about the culture or the setup.
so important. Like the dealing at the one in Maka, Cameroon, Aquavera is so smart. You gotta have boots on the ground and people who are in that community. They team with Jean-Philippe Gotcha Foundation, who has been a nonprofit for 25 years in that community. So they know the culture, they know. And again, we went over there the first time and spent a week. They said, you're spending a week at our facility and learning our culture and understanding, because we get this. I'm helping. I'm coming in to help. You're going to do it the way I. No, that again, you got to learn the people that you're trying to help. It's the same. I mean, we just helped with Maui wildfires. Okay. I thought it would be easy. It was one of the most complex, because you have these Native Hawaiians that believe that the U.S. stole. So all of these things come up and fester when stress and stuff like that. It was very, very difficult. You couldn't get parts through, people blocking roads, and again, so you come in with it, you know everything, you're there to help, and they should listen to you. No, you gotta listen to the people you're trying to help. Exactly what you're saying. So it is a process. It isn't as easy as just say, hey, I'm gonna help. Now,
Right.
listen, if you want to do that, absolutely, just donate the money and let the people who are doing the work, and you can, like you were saying, we're all made differently, like the human design, right? We all have different strengths and different weaknesses. We were all created with a different purpose, and we were all created with different gifts to help us achieve our purpose. As we just learned, I have no gift in technology, as I lost and got off, but I can surround myself with someone who is very good. So you take all those people that have different gifts and different strengths and put them together, and you're a powerful team. That when everyone starts to know what their purpose was for the way they were designed, you're then able to operate in that in a much better way, more efficient, and let other people with their gifts and their strengths operate in the things that you're not good at. And that's where you start seeing fruit.
I couldn't have
Yep.
said that better myself for human design. Like that's perfect. I did actually work with a company who are digital marketing company, and they were fairly new. So I did all the staff, bar one person refused. Everybody else's I did, and I was just able to help them understand. Look, this person needs to be in charge of something. Don't second guess them. So find something they're good with, lead them with it. They need that. This person needs it. In fact, I had a number of people in that company that had that particular part in their chart. But for all of them, it was like, okay, you're really good at ideas over this way, so embrace that. And and I just sort of helped them figure out where people's strengths were and what to give them to be in charge of. And they've been having a rare old time ever since. It's been fun to see how they used it. And it's not, I'm always going to get permission to share anything, and I'm not going to go into great detail, but the overall view of this person's really good at systems, that person's a really good visionary, this kind of thing helps people to figure out, oh yeah, I do that. Yeah, okay, I can do that. And we all have a role to play. Nobody's is less than the other person's, because if you're missing somebody, then you're missing somebody and it doesn't work, right? So you need everybody in there. It's just the trick is to recognize where are your gifts, because everybody has them. And what often happens is childhood will squash those. You get this story, you talk too much, or you're a rule breaker, or you're whatever, but you get this story from school, from parents, from society, and you make that mean something negative about you, because a kid's life understanding is this big. Adults are here, kids are here. So all they can do is make it about them, and it becomes a limitation later in life, a story they believe. Like Jeffrey, you saw that video. I had to go and have EMDR therapy to get over my throat closing up so that I could speak. It was a very big deal. It was traumatic. But I had taken that event and believed it and made it part of, I can't talk, I can't tell people things. Now you can tell, as we've been going for nearly 2 hours, I can happily talk all day long. It's not a problem. But it was.
Yeah.
Naturally, I can talk. But superficially, from this teacher who was really damaging, I couldn't.
It was a powerful testimony. It really was. And I really appreciate that. And again, it just, I believe in researching and like when Bill asked me to come on, I looked at his, and again, like I got excited. It's about conversation. It's about, allowing people, I think it's always good for visual. You take, if you took your glasses and put them on the table, it wouldn't be happy because it's not doing its purpose, right? Its purpose is to help you see better. So your glasses are only happy when they're on your nose and helping you see better. Or it's like if I took a brush and sent it to Bill, it wouldn't be happy. It doesn't have any hair to comb. So right, Bald Man Production. So I wouldn't be sending him a brush because it wouldn't be doing its purpose. Maybe for his beard and his goatee, but you getting the point. We're happiest when we're doing what we were created to be made for, and when we're fulfilling our purpose. And when we take ourselves out of that, things aren't in line. Things don't flow. The blessings can't flow. So, and that's what's happening in society today. Everyone is an expert and wants to be right on everything. And we don't give people time to say, hey, maybe this person is better at that than I am. Let me listen a little bit. Let me take some time. All of these sayings that are over and over again is because we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Let's listen more double than we speak. I don't do that too well because, as you could tell, you and I, Michaela, took over the conversation. Bill was basically sitting there saying, "All right," but it was really awesome. I really appreciated this 2 hours that we spent together.
Yeah, it has been.
Oh, this
is the first time in a while that the show's gone almost 2 hours. When it first went on, and I was having a lot more musicians, we went long because they'd play their music and all that. But this is the first time that in a long time. But yeah, so let's leave them wanting a little more. Let's leave a little bit in the tank for next time, because you two are definitely welcome back anytime. Before we do go, I'd like to ask you: do you have any final words for the nice people?
I do, of course, I do. Yeah,
okay.
In fact, it fits nicely with everything we've just been saying. Two of the things that I would love to eradicate from this world. And it's not world hunger, funnily enough. Two of the things are shame and blame. Because if you're feeling shame, you are disempowered and you can't do anything worth doing. Because you are disempowered and you're too busy in your own head about how awful you are. If you're blaming, you're putting it onto somebody or something else, then you are disempowered because you are giving your power to that other person, place, or being. And that means that you're not responsible for yourself. You're not responsible for your own actions, and you cannot grow from there. You cannot do anything useful. So shame and blame are two things I would love to eradicate from this world. Just grow whatever it is you need to grow. Take responsibility for yourself. And instead of being stuck in what you did wrong, look at how can I make this different? How can I move forward? And that's the power of making mistakes, is to learn how you can move forward. Shame and blame has no place in our society. That's what I'd like to leave you with.
I 100% agree, and I can sum it up that by forgiveness is so important. Forgiveness is for the person forgiving, not for the person that you are forgiving. So you got to forgive yourself. That takes the shame out, and you got to forgive others, which takes the blame out. Okay. So, forgiveness is a foundation, and no one practices that. I will do a shameless plug for my company. I do believe that you can't trust groundwater. Why wouldn't you have a machine where you control and so water goes from a gas form to a liquid form, it's pure. Then we just put minerals in it to raise the pH, but you're drinking the purest water and you control it. why wouldn't you want to do that with everything that's going on in this world? And then finally, Bill, thank you so much for having a platform in which people can discuss, that people can have, an ability to give their thoughts and opinions without people attacking and going back and forth. So I really applaud you. And Michaela, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I believe it was a God appointment that you were on the show with me. I thoroughly enjoyed sharing this time with you and ideas and thoughts. And I think that if people took the time to listen, that they'll get something out of this. And
if they're still with us, this is like major round of applause, man. You're really paying attention.
I know. I might have to figure out a way to break this episode
amazing up. Host.
Yeah, I might have to figure out a way to break this.
You've been a wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you,
Bill. You've been a wonderful host, and you've let the two of us talk and go in all different directions, and not worry about anything being a little bit controversial. And that's a breath of fresh air. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed
thank you
this.
both for being on. Check out their websites. The links are in the descriptions, and check out Michaela's podcast, and check out Alt D Water. And beyond that, I want everybody to stay safe out there. Be sure to wash your hands and stay tuned for the ending credits. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been a presentation of Bald Spots Productions. I'd like to thank our producer, my beloved mother, Eileen Hatch. I'd especially like to thank our associate producer, Paul Hernandez III, for his contribution to the shows this month. Follow his financial channel, HDZ Financial, on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram to stay on top of the latest financial news and improve your financial literacy. I, of course, am your humble host. I'd also like to thank my special guests, Michaela Gaffen Stone and Jeffrey Szur. Support the show if you feel so led over on patreon.com. We're known as Bald Spots Pro. Don't you dare miss YWL Online. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever fine podcasts are offered. Be sure to tune in next time when my special guest will be Lisa Schermerhorn, who is a best-selling author in human behavior and personal development, and will be featured in the movie Zero Limits, coming this fall. And Sally Peterson, a global diversification and international living expert. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Subscribe, follow, whatever it is you've got to do to kick that algorithm into gear and help us reach more people. If you or someone you know needs support now, call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. That is the suicide and crisis lifeline here in the United States.